All right, everybody, here we are again. Just going to take a quick look at the screen section, the main section. Well, maybe not the main section, but where you will be looking the most whenever you're using the Behringer x32 producer or any of the x32 line to line check a band, do a sound check, set up your recording, set up any parameters that you need to get the sound from the talent or the instrument, from the input to your loudspeakers to your recording software, whatever it may be. Right now you can see the screen that you will view whenever you hit the view button underneath the USB port on the top of the console. It's just to the left of the meters and home buttons over there. You can't see it. But that's how I'm recording my voice, so that's why it's there. I have the channel that I'm speaking through on this microphone. I have that channel selected. So we're going to go jump through the buttons to the left and the right of the screen just to see what they do on a very high level again. And we'll get more in depth in future videos, basically targeting one section at a time. So let's first jump to the home section. So the home screen is what's going to show. It's going to show you all the parameters you have for that selected channel. It's probably a little bit difficult to see on the screen. It's a little bit small, a little bit far away. But I wanted to get basically that whole interface, if you will. I wanted to get that whole thing in the shot. So that's why it's not as zoomed in as we might like. Regardless, you have channel linking. You have the channel trim. Then you're going to have your gate parameter right next to it. It's showing your EQ. It's showing if there's any dynamics, any compression on. And then it's showing you where in the signal chain your insert is. We'll get more into inserts a little bit later. And then you have panning. All of those parameters that I just talked about, you can adjust with physical encoders on the console. And there's a video that I did going through basically the channel strip section of this console, and all of those parameters you can adjust with those encoders, physical encoders on the actual console. They're over there. All right. So we're going to use these page and scroll keys, if you will, to move through the different tabs. One thing I do want to mention. When I got this console, there was the older firmware was loaded on it, and I recently updated to it's 4.0, version 4.0. Yeah, 4.02. For those of you keeping score, it's the look of it is so much nicer. It's got this kind of muted gray. It's really, really nice. It kind of looks blue in the screen, but it's this nice gray color. Anyway, so I'm going to page right to get to my configuration, the input section basically. And that's using, there's more on here than is in the configuration and preamp section over on the console. Just on a super high level, you have this knob right here is where you would select the channel source. So you can actually patch different channels. I don't know how to scroll through this. So I don't know if you can notice it's going through to select different channels. So what that allows you to do is allows you to patch input channels to any fader on the console. You'll see a lot of digital consoles nowadays don't actually have channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, channel 4. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4 if they're labeled, if the faders are labeled at all. So that's what that allows you to do. You're also going to have your trim, your gain. You can control the gain of the channel here. And then you can also press this to link channels. You can only link starting with an odd channel. So if I'm on an even channel, I can't link it to the next odd channel. I have to link odd to even. So if I linked it, it's going to ask you, do I want to link channel 23 or 24? No, I don't. If you did, you would press yes, obviously. And then we have our delay, or the input delay. You can toggle these. These encoders are they're pots, if you will, old school. And they also, if you press them, they will engage or select the parameter that you've scrolled over. We also have a knob for low cut, insert position, which is pretty clever. You can change the position of the insert. I don't know if there's a little yellow arrow right there, and as I scroll this, it's changing from pre-EQ to post-fader insert position, which is pretty neat. If you say wanted to insert an effect that isn't going to be that you didn't want to be affected by the channel EQ. The last one is whether or not the insert is on and what insert you'd like to select. You can set up, there's 8 stereo effects on the board. You can set up 4 of them to be inserts, so you would get actually 8. And that's what you're seeing here. So my stereo 5, stereo 6, stereo 7, and stereo 8 are my insertable effects. Okay, so we'll move on to the next page. This is your gate page. I'm not going to get super in depth into what a gate is, but if you want to see what your gate is doing, or if you want to see the signal as you're setting up the parameters for the gate, this is the screen you would want to be on. Same thing with compression. I'm not going to get into what compression is or what it does, how to set it up, but this is the screen you would want to be on if you were setting up a compressor, or if you wanted to see, if you were hearing a really pumpy, squashed sound, you would go over to that channel, select it, go to your compression page on the screen. You could see how much compression is being added to the channel, adjust the threshold if need be, all that good stuff. It's also important to note, in the other videos I was looking at the channel strip, I was saying press the view thing to see it on the view button to see it on the screen. As I'm going through these, the view buttons underneath the parameters that I'm looking at are actually lighting up as if I were to select them. So I can go over and do some magic and press the view button underneath the parametric equalizer section, and the PEQ shows up on the screen. So that's what you're seeing here. You can use these knobs to adjust different parameters on the EQ. And then we're going to get over to the sends page. This is actually a pretty clever page. It's not as intuitive as it could be, and it's not as useful as it could be. There's a lot of other consoles that have a lot of encoders on them that you can send, or that you can assign to the bus sends. And when you're selecting the channel, you have your bank of encoders, and they basically change into your send, so that you can then adjust the individual channel send to that to whatever bus it's going to in one page. That's kind of what this is doing. So I can scroll using this far left encoder. I can scroll through. Excuse me again. I can scroll through my available bus sends in groups of 4, and then as I'm scrolling, these last 4 encoders are changing to the levels of the channel send to that bus. So as I'm scrolling through here, you can see that. There's also a button right over here to the left of the screen that says bus send. There's a view button there, and that's how you would access this screen if you were on the individual channel. And then we have our main. This is an interesting page. If you remember I don't know if you've seen my video on using mix buses as groups and what my workflow is when I mix. This channel isn't actually being sent to the left and right main bus, or the sub bus for that matter. by itself. It's being sent to a group first, so that's why you don't see any levels on here. What I can do is I can adjust the level of the fader from this knob if it was being sent to these other channels. Okay, so now that was all on the home button. So if I go back to the home button, it'll bring me back to this page. And this is the page that I usually look at whenever I'm going through a show. This is, if I wanted to get a snapshot of a channel, this is what I would look at. We're going to go down to the next button underneath, that's meters button. There's 5 meter tabs on here. This is my input channels meter. And it also shows me the levels that the faders are at. It shows me gate gain reduction, and it shows me dynamic gain reduction. So it shows me when the gate is closed, and it's going to also show me when my compressor is engaging. I don't have a compressor on this channel, so it's not showing me when it's engaging or if it is engaging. But like I pointed out before, there's a really neat, I don't know if you can see the fader. It's moving up and down. So it's actually showing me a global snapshot of where my faders are at. So this is a really useful page too. If you have the X32 app on your iPad, I usually have the metering page up on the iPad so I can see at a glance what's happening. If I see meters in the red at the very top, that's a sign to me that something's going wrong, so I can go back to that channel and I can see what channel the problems are. Scrolling to the right, or tabbing to the right if you would, we have our mix bus meters showing me all 16 mix buses. It's showing me if I have anything sent to a matrix, and it's showing me my main buses over here. And then there's also the same thing, dynamic gain reduction. There's no gates on buses for a lot of different reasons, one of which it just doesn't make any sense intuitively. And it's also going to show me the gain reduction associated with that that bus. One more page, aux sends, aux returns, and FX returns. So if I were to go to my aux sends page on my faders, I can see at a snapshot again, this is just like a global overview page, where my channel is going, basically, is essentially what it's showing me. And then this is all my inputs and outputs. This one doesn't show your gate gain reduction or dynamic effect gain reduction, just because there's no room. But this is a really cool page to have up if you want to get an overview of your mix, see where everything's sitting. RTA is a really, really useful tool. I'll probably do another in-depth video on what I use RTA for, but yeah, it's a really useful tool to have up. It follows you can change it to have different sources, but it will mostly follow the fader that you have selected. And then we have our auto mix tab over here, which I'm not going to go through. Routing, the most fun part. I'm not really going to go into this at all. I'm just going to say that this is where you would access your routing to assign various physical or outboard gear inputs, stage box inputs, whatever it may be, to channels on the board, or vice versa, assigning outputs in faders on the board to whatever different outputs you might have. An example of this is I'm running an auxiliary controlled subs on an aux. So I have my main left and right assigned to output 7, physical output 7 and 8, and I have my sub output assigned to output 6. So that's how that goes. You can change, this is one of the things on this console that's a little bit confusing, if you will. It's not really very intuitive to look at and say, okay, I understand exactly what's going on. You kind of got to take it step by step. But once you kind of get the hang of what's going on and how they've set it up, it's not too terrible. I'll try to do a deep dive on that. I'm going to go to my library now. Let me press home and then library. Library is basically where you can store, where Behringer has stored EQ presets, entire channel strip presets, and where you can store your own channel strip presets, EQs, dynamics, gate, whatever it is. You can store those here in the library. There's also ones for effects, for the built-in effects. And then there's also routing presets, which is actually a pretty cool thing. If you're showing up to different venues, or if you're doing a lot of venues that maybe have, they need an auxiliary speaker somewhere else, a side fill, or there's an auxiliary room or an eating area or whatever. Like you might want to know that ahead of time, sit down at your desk, figure all this out, get up to the venue, and then recall your routing assignments. That's pretty cool. Effects. This is what I was kind of talking about before. I'm going to stay on the I'm going to stay on the home tab of this for now, and I'm not going to get into different effects. But like I mentioned before, effects 1 through 4 are built into the board, and they are returned to. If you go to the left side of the console, there's an effects returns fader bank, and you have stereo. There's 8 faders on that left side of the board. Those are the stereo returns for effects 1 through 4. The effects sends are on buses 13 through 16. So that's what that is. That's what it says there. Effects 5 through 8 on the console. Those are insertable effects. So I have those set up on various channels, various buses. Like I was mentioning in another video, I have an Ultimo comp on my mix bus. Well, it's group 1, which is mix bus 9. Same thing on mix bus 10. So I have a pretty good sounding compressor on what I can assign to those two mix groups. Then I have a mid-range equalizer on the left and right bus, and then I have a true graphic EQ on the matrix 1 and 2, which is actually feeding my left-right bus, or vice versa, but you get the point. All right, moving on to the right side. We're almost done. Setup. This is where you have all your various setup options for your console. I'm not going to really go through it. You have 7 tabs up there. So the global tab is things that you're affecting on the whole tab. You have the shutdown option. You got to shut down this thing because it is a computer before you turn the power off. You can create custom boot scenes. You can adjust the time, global settings, like I'm saying, LED brightness, LCD brightness, things like that. Configuration. There's bus pre-configurations. You can input linking to deciding what you want linked when you link a channel, like I was mentioning earlier. If you want everything linked, if you want just the delay and the configuration, if you want the EQ linked, the dynamics, whatever, the outputs, whatever it may be. Remote section, if you have a remote, if you're using it to control your DAW network, setting up the apps, names, icons, scribble strips. This is important to know. This is where they live. If you're trying to name a channel, it's under setup, name icon. It took me like 3 or 4 days to figure out where the heck to find that. Preamps, this is where you can set your predetermined gains for different channels, all the physical channels and card channels if you have them, stage box channels, all that good stuff. And this is where you would do your setups for the card. I do have a ADAT channel, not a channel strip. I have 8 ADAT preamps in the rack, so that's why you're seeing stuff on here. I'll go over that in a different video. Monitoring has useful things like monitor level, all of your various solo options. If you want to send a delay to the monitor, if you want to have a dim level for the monitor, where the monitor is coming from. Is it from the left-right bus? Is it after fader left-right? Is it an aux? Is it the left-right bus and the mid, the mono bus, where it's, all that fun stuff. Important things like talkback, setting up where your talkback's going. I have there's two talkbacks on here. I have talkback A is going to the bus mixes, and talkback B would be going to the front of house. There's also an oscillator on here, which is a pretty neat tool. A lot of modern day digital mixing consoles will have this. You can use pink noise and then monitor the pink noise to actually evaluate the acoustics of the room. All right. Scenes. Y'all know what scenes are. There's cues, scenes, snippets, and then you can set up your safes in these two tabs. And then you can actually, I didn't even really know this, you can actually cue things via MIDI from this. Is pretty crazy. Here's where you set up your mute groups. If I do have one complaint about this console, after comparing it to an Allen and Heath console like the SQ7, it's very difficult to set up mute groups. You have to do it, as far as I can tell. If there's a more streamlined way of doing this, please someone let me know. You basically have to assign channels individually to mute groups. You can't go and assign a group of channels, a block of channels at one time to a mute group. So that's that. The mute group is actually not a page on the screen. It kind of just comes up as this little overlay on the bottom. Last one, we have our utility. It's not showing anything right now. If I go over to my home and then press utility, it's very similar to the library that we saw earlier, except the utility has other things for the channel. It'll allow me to recall. It's similar to the library, but you can go over and like I was on the compressor section, and if I view my compressor and I hit utility, sorry for bumping the camera again, it's showing me the library thing, but it's only selecting compressor. So I can go to utility and I can go to one of these presets on here, and if I load that preset, it's only going to load the compressor into the channel strip. So that's a pretty neat thing to know. That was a really long video just on 10 buttons. So I can't wait for more long videos, I guess. All right, thanks everybody for listening. Like, comment, subscribe if you have to, and we'll try to get some more content out in the near future. Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.